The flame on Herschel Woody Williams' back was not meant to make him a hero. It was meant to make him a target. Every man on Iwo Jima knew what happened when that weapon appeared. Rifles turned toward it. Machine guns searched for it. Mortars waited for it. The man carrying the Flamethrowers had the power to destroy the enemy position, stopping the Marines' advance. He also carried the knowledge that everyone trying to kill him knew exactly where he was. And now Woody Williams was crawling toward a Japanese bunker complex that had already killed the men who tried before him. The question was not whether the Flamethrower could win the fight. The question was whether the man carrying it could survive becoming the weapon. The Marines had reached a place where courage was no longer enough. The enemy was not standing across an open battlefield. The enemy was inside the island itself. Concrete bunkers disappeared into volcanic rock. Machine guns fired from hidden openings. Soldiers vanished underground and returned from places that seemed impossible. Every advance created another wall. Every wall created another grave. The Marines had artillery. They had tanks. They had aircraft. They had enough firepower to destroy the surface of Iwo Jima. But the Japanese defenders were not on the surface. They were waiting beneath it. And that changed the question facing every Marine. Not how do we defeat them, but how will we reach them? The answer was something many soldiers never wanted to use. Fire. The Flamethrower was not a weapon of distance. It forced a man to move closer. Closer to the bunker. Closer to the enemy. Closer to the thing every instinct told him to avoid. The empty Flamethrower was heavy, awkward, and dangerous. Fuel tanks sat against the operator's back. A pressurized cylinder pushed the burning mixture forward. The man holding it carried enough weight to slow him down while becoming the most recognizable target on the battlefield. There was nowhere to hide. The weapon announced him. The enemy did not need to find the Marine carrying fire. The fire found him first. And that was the first decision these men had to make. Not whether they wanted the weapon, whether they were willing to become the person everyone wanted dead. For the Marines trapped on Iwo Jima, there was no perfect choice. Without the Flamethrower, enemy positions remained untouched. With it, the man carrying it often became the next casualty. Duty demanded one direction. Survival demanded another. Flamethrower operators chose duty. They lifted the tanks onto their backs. They stepped forward. And the moment they did, they accepted a new reality. They were no longer just Marines moving through the battlefield. They were the first target. The Japanese defenders understood exactly what the Flamethrower meant. They did not fear the weapon alone. They feared the person carrying it. Because if that Marine reached the opening of a bunker, the position that had protected them for weeks could disappear in seconds. Orders spread among Japanese units. Find the Flamethrower operators. Kill them first. The weapon that saved American lives also shortened the lives of the men carrying it. Every operator moved with the same knowledge. The next burst of fire might clear the bunker. The next bullet might end him. For many men, the hardest part was not the way of the weapon. It was what happened after they used it. A rifle allowed distance. A shell allowed separation. The Flamethrower removed both. The operator saw where the fire went. He saw what happened when it entered a confined space. He heard what followed. Then he had to continue. There was no time to process it. No time to understand it. Another bunker waited. Another position had to be cleared. Another Marine was trapped behind the same wall. The decision was always immediate. Keep moving. Keep burning. Keep going. But the weapon was destroying its own operators faster than the Marines could replace them. The battlefield created a terrible calculation. The Flamethrower worked. That was the problem, because every time it succeeded, commanders needed another man willing to carry it into the same nightmare. The Marines faced a new decision. They could keep sending men forward, or they could remove the man from the weapon entirely. The answer became a machine. The Marines placed the Flamethrower inside armor. The result was the Flame Sherman. Now the fire moved behind steel instead of a human body. The tank could carry hundreds of gallons of fuel. It could approach positions that would have been suicide for a man carrying a backpack. It could stay alive longer. But Iwo Jima was still Iwo Jima. The island did not become less dangerous because the weapon changed. The Japanese defenders adapted. Every flame tank became a priority target. Hidden explosives, artillery, ambushes, anything that could stop the machine before it reached the bunker. The Marines had created a solution. The island demanded another sacrifice. Then Woody Williams received the assignment. The Marines around him already understood what it meant. A group of Japanese pillboxes had stopped their advance. Previous attempts had failed. Men had moved forward and never returned. The bunkers were positioned so that approaching one exposed you to another. There was no safe path. No easy attack. Only a choice. Someone had to go. And Woody Williams stepped forward. He was not the man anyone would expect to become a legend. He was quiet. He was not searching for recognition. He did not see himself as someone extraordinary. He was simply a Marine standing in front of a problem that had no solution, and now the problem was his. The flame harbor was placed on his back. The weight settled onto his shoulders. The battlefield opened in front of him. Behind him were Marines who needed a way forward. Ahead of him were guns waiting to stop him. He had every reason to stay down, every reason to wait for someone else. Instead, he made the decision that would define his life. He moved. The volcanic ground gave him little protection. The Japanese positions watched every movement. Every second exposed him. Every step closer increased the chance that he would never come back. But Woody kept moving, not because he believed he could not die, because he understood that others would die if he stopped. The first bunker was waiting. He reached it, found the opening, and raised the weapon. For a moment, everything depended on one decision: pull the trigger, or turn away. Woody pulled the trigger. The bunker disappeared behind fire, but before the smoke cleared, he was already facing the next one. Because destroying one position did not end the danger, it revealed how many more remained. He returned for more fuel, then moved forward again. One position, then another. The battlefield narrowed into a series of impossible choices. Every bunker demanded the same question: will you go closer? Will you accept the risk? Will you carry this burden one more time? Woody answered the same way every time: yes. By the end of the assault, the positions that had trapped his unit were silent. The Marines could move forward. The battlefield had changed, but Woody Williams had changed with it. The weapon had done what it was designed to do. It had destroyed the enemy, but it had also forced one man to confront something far more difficult. What happens to a person who survives doing what survival required? The battlefield moved on. That was the strange cruelty of Iwo Jima. There was never enough time to understand what had just happened. A bunker was destroyed. A path was opened. A few more yards of ground were gained, and then another position appeared. Another war. Another decision. For Woody Williams, there was no moment when the weight of what he had done could fully reach him. The mission continued because the men around him still needed him. The flame harbor had become more than a weapon. It had become a responsibility he could not put down. The Marines eventually raised their flag over Mount Suribachi. The image became one of the most recognized photographs of the war. To the world, it represented victory. But for the men who fought through the island, victory was not a single moment. It was measured in the names of those who never reached the flag. It was measured in the empty spaces beside them. And for the flame harbor operators, victory carried another weight. They knew exactly what fire had required from them. They knew what it had taken. Woody Williams survived Iwo Jima, but survival was not the same as leaving the battlefield behind. The Marine Corps recognized what he had done. He received the Medal of Honor. He became the only flame harbor operator in World War I to receive America's highest military decoration. The world saw the medal. It saw the courage. It saw the story of a man who walked into impossible danger and changed the course of a battle. But Woody saw something else. He saw the men who did not come home. The medal could describe the action. It could describe the positions destroyed. It could describe the courage required to move forward under fire. But it could not describe what stayed behind. The memories. The faces. The knowledge that every position he destroyed had contained another human being. The flame harbor had solved the problem in front of him, but it created a question he would carry for the rest of his life. How does a person live with what they were forced to become? Many flame harbor operators never talked about what they experienced, so never told their families what they had done. They could explain the mission. They could explain the weapon. They could explain why it was necessary. But explaining was not the same as forgetting. The fire ended when the trigger was released. The memory did not. The men who carried flamethrowers were asked to do something almost impossible. They had to remain human while using a weapon designed to remove humanity from the enemy in front of them. They were not machines. They were not symbols. They were young men placed in a situation where every option carried a cost. If they refused to use the weapon, their fellow Marines might die. If they used it, part of them might never return home. The choice was never between right and wrong. It was between two different kinds of loss. That was the hidden battle inside the larger battle. The Marines were fighting to capture an island, but the flame harbor operators were fighting another war entirely. A war between duty and humanity. A war between the person they were before the battle and the person the battle demanded they become. Every time they lifted the weapon, they chose duty. Every time they survived, they carried the consequences. Years after Iwo Jima, Woody Williams rarely described himself as a hero. He often spoke instead about the men who died beside him, the ones who protected him while he carried the weapon, the ones who created the few seconds he needed to move forward, the ones whose names were remembered differently because they never had the chance to tell their own stories. For Woody, the metal belonged to them as much as it belonged to him. The world eventually changed its relationship with weapons like the Flamethrowers. The technology became outdated. The battlefield changed. Military thinking changed. But the question the Flamethrowers created never disappeared. How close should a human being be forced to come to destruction? Because the Flamethrower was different from other weapons. It removed distance. It placed the person using it face to minus face with the result. There was no hiding behind a screen. No separation. No illusion that war was clean. That was the final cost of the weapon. Not only what happened to the people who faced it, but what happened to the people who carried it. The Flamethrower saved Marines who would have otherwise been trapped by impossible defenses. It opened paths through positions that seemed impossible to overcome. But every path forward was paid for by someone willing to carry the fire. Out of the hundreds of Flamethrowers operators sent into the battle for Iwo Jima, many never returned. Some died before they ever had the chance to use the weapon. Others survived the island but carried the battle inside them for the rest of their lives. They returned home carrying no visible weapon. But the weight remained. The story of Iwo Jima is often remembered through images. The flag on the mountain, the Marines moving across the black sand, the final advance toward victory. But behind those images were thousands of smaller decisions. Moments when ordinary people faced impossible choices. Moments when someone had to step forward. Moments when someone had to carry what nobody else wanted to carry. Woody Williams did not become a legend because he was fearless. He became a legend because he acted while fear was still there. He did not move forward because the danger was gone. He moved forward because the danger was the reason he had to. That was the decision that defined him. Not the weapon. Not the medal. Not the battle. The choice. At the beginning of the story, the question was simple. Who would carry the Flamethrower? Who would become the target? Who would walk toward the place everyone else was trying to escape? The answer was not a superhero. It was an ordinary man. A Marine who understood that someone had to make the decision. The Flamethrower was built to destroy enemy positions, but the real story was never about the fire. It was about the person who carried it. Because history does not change only through weapons. Armies, or battles. It changes when someone standing at the edge of an impossible choice decides to move forward. And on the black sands of Iwo Jima, that decision belonged to the men who carried fire.